So today I'm here to talk all about the books that I read in December and some of the books that I'm going to be reading in January. Typically I split my TBR and wrap up into two videos, but I'll be having another TBR, it might already be up, it might be coming up soon, for Medieval-a-thon. And because that takes up the last 2/3 of January, I'm going to have just a couple books at the end of this one that I'm going to be reading towards the beginning of January before Medieval-a-thon starts. If my TBR is already up before this one, then I'll have that linked in the corner if you want to check out Medieval-a-thon. During December, I read 6 books, 2 audiobooks, and 4 physical books, and I really enjoyed mostly everything that I read. So I'll start out with my 2 audiobooks because I always want to get those out of the way so I don't forget them since I don't have them in a pile here. The first one that I listened to was Girl Wash Your Face by Rachel Hollis. This is kind of a self-help, inspirational kind of book. I just heard a lot about Rachel Hollis, so I decided to pick this one up, and I just don't really think that her style is really for me. It's very much like girlfriend vibes, like you got a girlfriend, and that's just not really my cup of tea. A lot of my friends really did enjoy this book, so I think a lot of people would really get a lot of value out of it. I did really like her perspective on things like goal setting and really like working towards your goal, and you can really do anything you want to do if you set your mind to it. Like that's very much her life mantra, and I did really enjoy that, and that aligns with my belief system, but just the way that she presents it is just not really me. I did really like her personality, and she was very entertaining to listen to, so I would recommend this one, but it's not like a favorite or anything like that. The second audiobook I listened to was A Night to Remember by Walter Lord, and I loved this one. It's pretty short. I think it's around 6 hours, and this is like a recounting of the Titanic sinking, and this was so good. I've already filmed my nonfiction favorites recommendation of the year, and I wish that I had waited just a little bit because I would have included this on there, but I listened to this after I'd already filmed it. I wasn't really planning on listening to any more nonfiction, but I just happened to pick this one up and I loved it so much. This is like the perfect style of nonfiction book for me. I read In Cold Blood by Truman Capote earlier this year, and that was very fictionalized, and I didn't like how he did it because a lot of stuff, it seemed like, how could you possibly know these things? Nobody could know like the killer's facial expression and things like that, but it was added into the book to make it a little bit more digestible for a reader, and I just didn't like that. I prefer like things very factually based. This did a fantastic job of collecting all these different people's experiences on the Titanic and melding them together to make a cohesive story, but not just adding in a bunch of random little made up details to try to make it seem more realistic. It really felt like a story, but it was what truly happened. So you could really put yourself in the shoes of the people on the Titanic and really visualize what it would have been like to suffer such a horrible tragedy in history. I'm definitely interested in checking out more books by Walter Lord in the future. Okay, so now into the physical books that I read this month. The first one being Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky. This is my annual reread of it. I've talked about it so many times, I don't really have much to say. My thoughts are the same about it. I do feel like every time I read this book, I get something new out of it, depending on what stage in life I am when I read it, and I just love that about this book. I can see myself reading this for many, many years to come in the future. So 5 stars, obviously my rating has stayed the same. Then next up, I've got Only Human by Sylvain Nouvelle. This is the 3rd and final book in the Themis files. I was really excited to wrap up this series before the end of the year. This series is following a scientist who, when she was a young girl, she stumbled upon this like giant robotic statuesque hand. It was obviously not of earthly descent, and so as she grew up, she went to college and studied what she could to try to figure out the source of this robot. And so it's following her life story as they're kind of uncovering the history of it. It's told in dossier files and interviews. I ended up giving this one a 4 star, but overall I do think that this was probably my least favorite of the 3. I didn't quite love where the plot went with this one. I would have preferred it to go a different direction, but it was fine either way. I did still enjoy it, and I think it was a solid series ender. Then I finally got around to reading The Kiss of Deception by Mary Pearson. This has taken me forever to read. I've had this on my shelf for so long. This was the last book on my you have to read this year or else you have to get rid of it list. So I'm glad I finally got done with it, and I'm glad I know what everyone is talking about with the Remnant Chronicles now. This is following a princess who flees her kingdom and wants to start like a new life in this little village, and she ends up having 2 people chasing after her. One is an assassin and one is a prince. They reach the village, find her, and interact with her, but you don't really know which one is which throughout the interactions. This was not really what I was expecting it to be. It's very much about village life and her like just trying to live a calm, peaceful life and developing a relationship with these guys that she doesn't know who they are. I was expecting more of like a pursuit story. It's not really that. I read The Winner's Curse by Marie Rakowski earlier this year and did not like it at all. It was one of my least favorite books of the year. It really focused on the romance and left everything else by the wayside. And I feel like this was similar in tone to, not similar in plot or anything like that, but similar in tone to The Winner's Curse, but done much better. The focus still is on the romance and the relationship. I don't think that she left everything else and just completely abandoned the plot or anything like that. I think she kept up pretty good with it. I don't think this is a new favorite series for me, but I did enjoy it and I gave it 4 stars. I probably will continue on with it, but it's not at the top of my TBR. Then finally, I read a book that I really, really loved, and that was Into the Heartless Wood by Joanna Ruth Meyer. This book was so good. I ended up giving this one 5 stars. This is following a boy who has grown up on the edge of this mysterious woods with monsters within it. In the year prior, the woods took his mother and killed her. Him and his dad and his little sister have just been trying to cope and figure out their new way of life without their mother. Eventually, he meets one of the sirens of the woods and develops a relationship with her. And I loved this book. I am so excited to read more by Joanna Ruth Meyer because this one just blew me away. I would really recommend this for fans of Winter Song by S.J. Jones. I know not very many people loved that book, but I think if you did love that book like I did, I think you would also love this one. It has a very similar lyrical, haunting quality to it. I really liked that we were following a boy for a main character. Typically in YA, it almost always follows a girl, so I really liked that we were following a guy. I thought when it switched perspective to the wood siren, it was so great because you could definitely tell that she wasn't a human. Sometimes when there's like a creature involved in a book, it's very much humanized, but this was not that way, and I really liked that there was that separation between them. It also kind of had a Little Mermaid vibe to it, but set on land, so I think that if that sounds appealing to you, I think you would really like this book. I was very surprised to find a YA fantasy that I really loved this year. I've already filmed my favorite books of the year, but at the end of that video I do like some honorary mentions, and I don't think that this would have made it into my top 10, but I would have included it into my honorary mentions, so just know that. This is an honorary mention for a favorite book of the year. Not quite in my top 10, but I would still highly recommend checking it out. So now on to the books that I'm going to be reading during the first part of January. The first one is Outlawed by Anna North. This is a Western historical fiction. It says the Crucible meets True Grit in this riveting adventure of a story of a fugitive girl, a mysterious gang of robbers, and their dangerous mission to transform the Wild West. This was sent to me by Bloomsbury Publishers, so I appreciate that, Bloomsbury. It's coming out in January. I love Western, so I'm really looking forward to picking up this one. Then I have another historical fiction, and that is Salt to the Sea by Ruta Sepatis. This is set around the time of World War II. This is following a very tragic shipwreck. I've just heard so many people rave about this book, and it's finally time for me to pick it up. I've had it on my shelves for so long. It's won a whole list of awards. Each of these is another award that it won. And this also is on my list of must-read books for the year, so I'm excited to check one of those off right at the beginning. Then I also have Artemis by Andy Weir. This is following a girl who is a thief on the moon, and that's basically all I know. I loved The Martian so much, and I want to read this one before Project Hail Mary comes out so I can kind of have a good perspective of his past works. This hasn't gotten great reviews, but I'm going into it knowing that, so hopefully I enjoy it a little bit more than some other people have. Then finally, I've got a classic, and that is Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie. I'm sure you probably already know about this book. It's basically about a train journey through Europe where people just start dying, and Agatha Christie is like the queen of classic mystery, so I'm really excited to get back into her works. I haven't read something by her in probably 10 years, so I'm really happy that I'm going to be getting back into this. We're going on a socially distant vacation. We've rented a house up north that has a lot of snow, and I just thought that this would be the perfect book to read there, so I'm super excited to take this with me. Well, that is all the books that I read during the month of December, and also some of the books that I want to read in January. Make sure to stay tuned for my Medievalathon TBR, or watch it if it's already been posted. It's my favorite readathon to join, so I'm very excited. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to like it down below and subscribe if you'd like to see more content from me in the future. And I'll see you in my next one. Bye!